Hey everybody, Nick Dingle here once again for a VB.NET 2013 tutorial. In this video, I'm going to take you through subs, functions, and parameters. Okay, probably not in that order, but we'll do those three things here. Just a quick note, you might notice that my computer's looking a little bit different today. I'm actually on a completely different computer. Unfortunately, my laptop has died and I have to send it away to get it repaired. And this is why it's been so long since I did a video. But for the moment, let's have a look at those three things that we're going to cover. Let's look at subs. We'll do parameters next. And then finally, let's have a look at functions. Okay, so let's quickly explain what these are. Now, essentially, if you're going to write a big program, let's start thinking about breaking our programs down into little pieces. All right. Right now, our entire program starts at module and ends with end module. That is all of our code in one big happy family. All right. And this little chunk of code, sub main and end sub, where we've been putting all of our code for every single video prior to this one, is actually just a portion of our program. It's a tiny little bit. It's where Visual Basic will begin. It will always begin a console program at sub main. But in all honesty, sub main is just a tiny chunk of my program's entirety. I can actually make up as many subs as I want, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Now, one thing to note too, a sub is short for subroutine. Okay, a routine is you doing things, and a subroutine means a portion of what you're doing. So what we're going to do in this video, we're going to walk through a program which just does some really basic maths. So this is what it's going to do. First of all, it's going to have a menu they're going to select from. They're then going to be able to select what type of maths operation they'll do. Then finally, we'll collect two numbers and then perform the maths operation. All right, so that's our basic setup for this program. And I reckon the best way to do this kind of thing is you break this up into as many pieces as you possibly can, starting with the first thing, which is generally going to be like your menu or something similar to that at this rate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I can actually make, as I said before, as many subs as I want. So if I go sub and then give it a name, and in this case, I'm going to make the menu. So let's just call it menu. And I press enter. Notice that all of this was automatically inserted by Visual Basic. Okay, I didn't type any of that. You just saw it appear in front of me, and that's actually what happened. So basically, this is now another portion of code where I can put all of my instructions, all of my basically my routine for a menu. Okay, so what I'll probably do is let's set up the menu straight away, and then I'll show you how to use this thing. So let's go console write line. Welcome to Maths Fun. Let's do a quick write line because it looks pretty. And then let's do our menu. So let's go. A is for add. B is for subtract. Sorry if I'm going too fast, guys. C times D divide. And let's chuck in good old modulus because he always gets forgotten. Okay, that's our program for the moment. So basically what we're going to do, the menu just spits out the menu, and later on we're going to extend it. So if we type in A, it sends us to the add sub and the subtract sub and the time sub, which we'll set up in just a moment. But for the moment, let's press play and let's see how our program goes. Let's see what it actually does. Absolutely nothing. So if we come back down, Visual Basic always starts at sub main. Okay, if you can remember that one. And it will always close the program when it touches this particular end sub. All right, what's actually happening is these are all comments, so it's doing nothing. Okay, Visual Basic doesn't start up here at menu, it will always start at main. So it touches main and then hits end sub and closes the program. So what we're going to do to be able to access menu, all of this code, is we've actually got to call upon the sub menu. And it's easier than it sounds. Okay, right here you just type in the name of your sub that you want to call. So in this case, menu. And that's it. So let's press, I just need to put in a read line because that'd be silly if I forgot one. All right, let's press play and see how that goes. There's my menu. Okay, I'm at the read line, so if I press enter, it closes it up. Perfect. All right, so now what we need to do, let's set up a sub for every single type of operation we're going to have for the add, the subtract, times, divide, and modulus. Okay, so starting with sub add, sub, don't know why I called it subtract and not minus. Anyway, sub times, sub divide, get it, modulus, and we're good. We've got all these subs. Now, subs are really, really handy when you want to start breaking your code up into pieces. Okay, it's just easier to understand things if they're broken up into smaller pieces rather than having one big program. You can have lots of little pieces. All right. A couple of things that really, I think, are really big advantages of using subs is not only can you break up your code, but if there's an error in your menu, if your menu is not working properly, then generally the error is going to be in between this sub. So it's easy to track down all of your errors, okay, and quickly flick to it, fix the code, and then jump back into the program. The second thing you can do, it's actually really handy for navigational purposes. Let's say you have 10,000 lines of code. I don't know why, but let's say you do. And you need to jump between the top of the code and the bottom of the code. Or let's say you don't even know where the sub might be. You just want to jump straight to it. What you can actually do is use this thing up here that says menu. This is actually like a quick navigational thing. So as you can see, I've got main, menu, add, times, divide, subtract, all the ones that I set up. And you can actually use this to quickly jump between all of your pieces of code. So I'm probably going to be using this for the majority of the video, just to switch around between all of my different subs. So you don't have to wait, and I don't have to wait either, because I'm lazy and I like to do things quickly. All right, now there's two more things I want to do in sub menu. I want to be able to repeat the menu, and I want to be able to incorporate our if statements. So if they type in A, then we're going to go up to sub add. If they type in B, then we're going to go to sub subtract, and so forth. Okay, so first of all, let's dim our variable up here. I like to call them selection. This is very similar to what we did in the previous video, so if you want to do this now, it's entirely up to you, but I'm just going to quickly do this in front of you. I like readline personally. Wow, doing well. Okay. So for the moment, all I'm doing is setting up the if statement, everybody. If we have a look at it, this one here is going to let them type in a letter and press enter. And this here, we're checking what they've entered. So if they've selected A or a big A, now I know there's different ways to do that, but I'm just keeping it simple. Then what do we want to do? Well, we want to add two numbers together, don't we? Because they selected A. So basically, the code for our add function should be up here in sub add. So what I'm going to do, just as a quick debug message to make sure that we're in the right place at the right time, I'm going to go console write line and just type in you selected to add two numbers. So I'm not going to do anything at the moment. I'm just going to write that simply in there. Okay, and an empty sub of code which tells me I'm in the right place but doesn't actually perform any operation is known as a stub. Okay, just like when you go to the movies and they tear your ticket and give you the other side of the ticket, it's known as a stub. All right, and a stub tells us we've got code, we're in the right place, but we have not finished it. Okay, and we can do this for each of the other subs, and this will be quite easy. I'm just going to copy this line 4 more times. Whoop. And then just change this. I'm going to say minus. Why not? You chose to times, you chose to divide, and you chose to mod two numbers. Okay, back down to our menu. What do we want to do? We want, if they select in A, then we want to go back up to sub add. So we need to call on sub add, and how do we call it? You just type in the name, which is add. Okay, just like so. Now my computer's being slow. Give me a second. All right, we're back. Now, what I'm going to do is if they type in A, I'm not doing anything. So I need to extend my if statement to include B, C, D, and E. Okay, and in fact, I really should have one more, which is Q for quit. Okay, and I like to put a nice little gap in between those because it just looks pretty. Alright, so let's extend this if statement now. So copy, put an else, and then paste. So it says else if they enter B or a big B. Then what do we want to do? We want to subtract. There's my sub. Alright, now I'm going to do big copy and pastes. 3, 4, 5. So if they enter C or D or A, D or A, subtract, times, divide, modulus. Alright, if statement's set up, let's make sure the bugger is working. So what we can do, once my computer starts responding, hit play and test it out. Okay, so what do we want to do? Let's add. You've selected to add 2 numbers. If I press enter, it's going to close my program. Alright, that's looking pretty good. So what we need to do now is loop the menu so all of this gets repeated. And that's pretty straightforward. Basically, we want to keep repeating this code until they type in the letter Q. So let's do it like this. Let's go while selection does not equal Q and selection does not equal big Q. Then we're going to repeat this code, and you put your end while just here. What I suggest you do is just have a quick test of your menu sub. Alright, I'm going to just quickly move my screen up so you can copy my code. I'm just going to quickly do one extra little command here. Let's just clear the screen. So every time we return to the menu, we get a nice fresh menu screen. Okay, so you copy this code, pause the video, get it down. I'll scroll down now. Copy all this code and let's get up to speed. Okay, so let's move on to the first sub, which really would be add. So up here, what we want to do is we want to grab 2 numbers, get rid of your debug code. So we want to grab 2 numbers. So, well, we need to dim num and dim num2. So we can store our 2 numbers. Okay, if you don't understand that, I want you to go back to the user input videos, which I think is roughly number 4. Okay, and come back and join us in a second. What we should do is always ask them politely for their first number. Please enter your first number. And then the next line, we are going to actually get the number from the user. So if you go num equals console.readline, that's exactly what that's going to do. And essentially we're going to do the exact same 2 things, these 2 things, for the second number, but just change that to num2. Okay, so these lines of code here are going to collect your 2 numbers, right? And now we need to add them. So let's add them together. Let's write line, your 2 numbers added are, and then just do your little equation here. Just go concatenate num plus num2. Okay, and then just a quick read line because we're done. All right, we haven't done the other subs, but this is basically going to be the essence for every single sub that we do. And like all good programmers, you should test your code quickly just to make sure it's working. So let's test that out. Okay, so let's choose A for add. Please enter your first number 5, second number 10. Your 2 numbers added are 15. We're back on the menu, which is fantastic. So I can choose something else. I can't choose subtract or whatever, but it's not crashing, which is good. And if I type in Q, we're done. All right, so what I'm going to do, everybody, is I'm going to stop the videos. I'm essentially going to copy this code into subtract. In fact, I'll show you the first one, and then I'll stop the video. So I'm going to copy all of this code here and paste it inside of subtract. And then just edit this so it works with subtract. So pretty much the only lines that we need to change. So your 2 numbers subtracted are num1 minus num2. So that's pretty much all you need to change, that one little line of code, and that's going to fix it all up for you. So what I want you to do is pause the video, fix up the rest of the subs, and come back when you're done, because that's what I'm going to do now. Hope your code's as ready as mine is, because I'm good to go. So what I've done is in each sub, I have changed it to the correct operation is the word I'm looking for, including our good old friend modulus, which is just the word mod if you've forgotten that one. So realistically, go ahead, test your program, make sure each one of those functions is working. So I'm going to test out subtract. 5 minus 10 is minus 5, times 5 times 10 is 50, divide 5 divided by 10 gives us half, which is good. Good old modulus. He's a bit lonely always. Two numbers modded are 5. Now, one interesting thing to note to everybody is if you don't remember what divide and modulus have in common, basically they are both a division. So modulus is essentially a division, but instead of a regular divide, what it does is it will return the remaining value to you. So, for example, if I do modulus, if I go 6 modulus 2, I get 0, because when you go 6 divided by 2, there's no remainder. However, if I quickly go 7 divided by 2, I get 1 as a remainder. Okay? One interesting thing to note too, if I divide by 0, which everyone knows is impossible, Visual Basic can handle that. It tells me it's infinity. However, if I do a modulus by 0, it crashes. Attempt to divide by 0. Don't ask me why it can handle a division but it can't handle a modulus. I have no idea whatsoever. But moving along, let's actually get back into this code. One more thing I really like about subs too, everybody, is these little collapsible buttons. If I click on this button here, it's going to collapse my code into a nice, easy to find, organized code. So all those lines of code are now hidden underneath that, and I can just re-expand it and change any code that I want, close it off again, and we can just keep on moving. So it's a good way if you're finished with your code just to neaten it up a little bit. So that's pretty much it, everybody. When it comes to subs, that's a sub, all right? And really, at the moment, we're being pretty damn inefficient, okay? By the simple fact that we're copying and pasting code. If you ever find yourself copying and pasting code, you really need to think, well, is there a better way to do this? And most of the time, there is. There's been very rare occasions where I've had to copy and paste my code. Most of the time, I can get away with a loop, a sub, a function, or what I'm about to show you now, a parameter. Now, essentially, every single sub that we've set up so far has got this chunk of code before it. We're creating two numbers, collecting those two numbers, and then all we're doing is performing an operation on those two numbers. So realistically, what we should be able to do is we should be able to set up a sub, collects the numbers for us, so we only ever have to write this chunk of code once, and then we call on subtract or add or whatever to do the actual operation on those two numbers. So what I mean by that is we write this code in a sub once, and then we call on our subtract or our add or something like that. So what I'm going to do, I'll just minimize these for the moment, and let's set up another sub just here, and I'm going to call it sub collect to numbers. Okay, and from this, I'm just going to copy and paste this code inside of that sub. So from the dims down to num2. So if I copy this and paste it here, that's going to perform the operation for us. And so the idea will be, we're going to call on collect two numbers before we do any of the operations. And that way, add, subtract, times, divide, and modulus don't have to do this code. It's just this one sub that's got it. So I'm going to go in these ones and I'm going to delete that code just quickly. Delete. Delete. Almost there. Delete. All right. So that's done. That's well and truly fine. However, we're running into a problem now. Let's just keep this open. There's no problems in here. That code's going to run perfectly fine. However, if I open up, say, sub add, we've got two errors. And they both say num is not declared, and you'll see here num2 is not declared. So basically, to declare a variable, we have to do this line here. dim num as integer. So Visual Basic knows exactly what num is, what it's called, and what kind of data is going to go inside of it. The problem is I'm dimming or declaring these variables inside collect2numbers. And if you do that, these variables will only live inside collect2numbers. They don't exist in any of the other subs. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these lines. Okay. I'm going to cut them because I'm going to move them up the top of my module, just here. And you'll see our problem goes away in every single one of our subs, including collect2numbers, because what I've just done is I've made these numbers exist throughout my entire program. Before, when I put them inside collect2numbers, they would have been created at the top and destroyed at the bottom. All right. However, now they're at the top, they're going to exist through the entire program and never be destroyed. Okay. So let's test this out. We've only got to do one little modification to our menu, and that should hopefully fix it. So let's let them type in their menu selection and then simply straight after call on our new sub, collect2numbers. So we'll collect the two numbers and then we'll perform our operation from there. So quick test, let's just do one of them. A for add. There you are, there's our two numbers, collect 5 and 10, and it's calling on sub add as well. And there's another problem. If I type in Q for quit, it's going to collect two numbers. So what we need to do, just quickly check that selection doesn't equal Q here. So if selection does not equal Q and selection does not equal big Q, then whoops, collect two numbers. All right, let's put a few comments in here because that code's starting to look a little bit ugly. Yep, if they don't quit, collect two numbers. And then we go, what operation did they select? And then we do that. Okay, that's looking a lot better. Okay, so for right now, this code is fine. Every single sub has got its own job. Every single one is working really well. And you know what? Effectively, we could probably just stop there. Okay, that would be everything that we need to do. However, all I've taught you about so far is subs or a subroutine. Okay, that's all I've taught you about so far. I need to now move on to parameters and teach you this one here. And in fact, this bit up here, these variables are called global variables because they exist globally throughout our entire program. Before they were local variables when they were inside a sub. Now they're global. Global variables are bad. Okay, they can cause issues, they can cause memory leaks, they can cause compatibility errors, lots and lots of different things can go wrong with them. Okay, and really what you need to do is dim your variables only in the subs where you need to use them. Okay, and really, where do we need to use them really, really badly is only here in collect2numbers. Okay, that's the interesting part. So we actually have to make this guy a little bit more important. Okay, we have to tell this guy what operation are we about to perform. Okay, are we about to add, are we about to subtract, are we about to times and divide? So we're giving him another job. Okay, not just collecting two numbers. He's going to collect two numbers and then he will call upon add, subtract, times, divide, and modulus for us. Okay, so we've got to make a few modifications. We've got to modify our collect two numbers and we've got to modify our menu, and that hopefully should be it. All because if we keep num and num2 up here, that's just bad practice. So first of all, I'm going to delete this and realize that these are now broken. Okay, no, in fact, I'm going to keep these back. Excuse me for a second. I'll do that in a little bit. Let's first of all set up collect two numbers so that when we do our two numbers, it then calls on one of these subs for us. So what we have to do, we have to send a message to collect two numbers now to tell it, well, we chose add. That's where we want to go straight after we get these numbers. Did we choose subtract? Then we'll go there straight after we collect two numbers. So what we need is something in these parentheses. We need a little what's called parameter, and it lets us control our subroutines or our functions. Okay, and for this one, I'm going to call it operation, and I'm going to make it a string. Notice it looks almost exactly like a variable. It's got a name, and it's got a data type. All right. So what I'm actually telling Visual Basic here is I have a subroutine called collect2numbers, and I expect to be sent a string. Okay, and what we're going to do with the string, if they send us the word add, then we're going to add for them. If they send us the word subtract, then we're going to subtract for them. Okay, things like that. So what I mean is we can actually use operation like a variable. So we can go if operation equals add, then we call on add. And then same thing as before, else if the operation equals subtract, then we call on subtract, and so forth. So let's quickly do that. Whoop, no capitals. Just be careful of what you type in here too. It has to be exactly right. And all right. So as I said before, we're going to send a message to collect2numbers, and the message is going to consist of add, subtract, times, divide, or modulus, based on what they select on the menu. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, I'll pause the video if you need to type this stuff up, but I'm going to go down to menu, and notice how it's actually complaining to us. It's saying an argument not specified for parameter operation. So what it's saying is you did not send me a message. You didn't put anything inside of operation. All right, that's fine. For the moment, I'm going to get rid of this piece of code because we don't need it anymore. In fact, we're going to get rid of this add, and we're going to go collect2numbers, and in the brackets, it's asking me what operation are we about to perform. Well, we're going to go for add. And I'm going to do a similar thing for subtract, times, divide, and modulus. So I'm going to copy this, paste it down here, and simply change the operation that we're about to perform. Subtract, times, divide, and modulus. So notice how these words that I'm sending it match up exactly to these words up here too. Okay, so what's actually happening is the word or the string add is being jammed inside of operation, and then we can actually check what that value is anywhere we want inside of collect2numbers. So collect2numbers has now grown in responsibility. It now collects two numbers and then actually performs the operation for us, which frees up our menu a little bit. So menu simply calls on collect2numbers now, basically. So always test, make sure it still works. Go A for add. There's our two. This is our collect2numbers, so 5 and 10. Your two numbers added up 15. Back to the menu and quit. Good stuff. All right. So the last thing that we have to do is we must get rid of these if we can help it. Sometimes global variables cannot be avoided. If you can avoid them, do so immediately. So what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of this parameter. And each of these subs is going to have two of their own, okay, which are going to be the numbers that we add together. So what I mean is we're going to dim these numbers in collect2numbers again. So I'm going to cut this code here to get rid of our global variables because they're bad practice. Paste them here so we can fix our errors. Now we're stuck with the problem that since these variables only exist inside collect2numbers, how does modulus use them? And it's not just modulus. I mean, we're talking about add, subtract, times, and divide. How do all of these subroutines access num1 and num2 since they don't exist compared to these modules? Well, basically, if we start with, let's just say add. I'm just going to use add as my little guinea pig for this entire thing. And when I fix add, we'll move it on to all the other subs. The easiest solution simply would be to, or you'd think it would be, just to dim the numbers up here. Well, if you can't access them in add, well then make them. Well really, that seems like the most logical way to go. You can see my errors have been fixed. And really if I did that to all my other subs, I could play my program. But there would be an issue. Now because down here in collect two numbers, I'm creating these variables, these integers, filling them up with values on this line and this line, and then we're calling add. Now, believe it or not, this dim here is not the same as this dim here. Okay, they're actually completely separate. So let's imagine this. Let's say for num, I type in the number 20. Okay, num would be filled up with the number 20, and when we come up to add, this one here would be 0. Okay, because they're completely different because they're in different subs. So what we need to do is set up a system where I can pass these two numbers up to add. So we're not going to use brand new variables. We're going to use the same system that we used for collect two numbers with operation, except for this time I need two of them. They need to be numbers, and I'm going to name them just num and num2. Okay, I don't have to call them num and num2. I can actually call them whatever I want. But for now, I'm just going to go num as integer, and if I want a second parameter, you put a comma and then go num2 as integer. Notice again, they're just like variables, and all of a sudden we've fixed our errors just here, okay? And it looks all well and good, but if I come down to collect two numbers, I've created an error here, because every time I call on add, it's now asking me for two numbers, because that's what I've just set up at the top there. I've said that whenever you call add, we need to pass it two numbers. And that is really, really easy to do. What are our two numbers that we're passing it? Well, we're going to pass it num and num2. And to pass this, you simply type in num. And you can see down here, there's our first number that we're passing it. And the second number, we just put num2. Now, as I said before, this name here and this name here don't have to be the same. In fact, I'm going to change it just to show you how that works. So if I call it A and call this one B, all right, I'll have to change these ones here. All right, see, no errors at the moment. They're called A and B, not num1 and num2. If I come down, see there's no errors there. Basically what I'm saying is the value that's inside of num will be passed up inside of A. And the value for num2 is going to be passed up into the value for B. All right, and it's going to add them together, and it's going to do everything that we want it to do. So what we need to do now is fix all the errors that exist in the rest of them, okay? So I'm going to quickly do this with some copying and pasting. So I'm going to highlight my parameters, paste, 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 and paste. We have to fix up the names because I changed it to A and B. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I'm just going to do that so you know that the names don't really matter. All right. So all those are done. I'm going to quickly collapse those and come back down to collect two numbers and fix all these up. So we need to do the same thing that we've done to add. We need to pass subtract, times, divide, and modulus our two numbers. So a bit of copying and pasting again. Copy, paste, 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 paste. Okie doke. That's good to go. Let's test her out. Let's just try with add. Whoa, that was weird. Add 5 and 10. 2 added a 15. All right, let's just quickly do subtract then. 5, 10, minus 5. Perfect. All right. So pretty much at this point, we're good. Our code, it doesn't repeat itself all over the shop. Okay, a collect two numbers now has its two jobs. It collects those numbers for us and calls on our math operation that we want to perform. And pretty much we could leave it at that. That could be the last thing that we do. However, I still haven't introduced you to our last little concept called functions. Okay, we've done subs. So subs are chunks of code all separated, and you have to call on it to have it executed. Parameters are basically variables, but we can pass them between subs. All right, and it's a good way. They're called parameters because they change the way that our sub operates a little bit. If you take our collect two numbers sub, for instance, it will take operation, and depending on what the value of operation is, such as, you know, if we set operation to add or set operation to subtract, it changes the way collect two numbers works. That's why they're called parameters. And finally, this functions, okay? Functions are actually the exact same thing as a sub. In fact, you can almost call a sub a very simple type of function. All right? And the only difference between a sub and a function, they both have code. Okay, they both get called on. They both can have parameters, but a function will return a value. or it has to return a value. If you have a sub, it's assumed that you are not returning a value, you're just executing some code. With a function, you're actually going to return something. Okay, and for instance, a function that we've used time and time again would be readline. Okay, because we can call on it. It executes some code for us in the background, but it also returns a value so we can capture it. Okay, and that value is whatever the user's typed in. So really what these functions here should be doing, or these subs I should say, they shouldn't be performing the add function for us, because right now all we can do is write it to the screen. What if we wanted to use add to add up 4 different numbers? So we'd add the first 2 numbers, then add the third one, then add the fourth one. All right. The problem right now is all our add function done is all our functions or subs is add them up and display them on the screen. What if we don't want to do that? We want to keep it generalized. So when we pass it 2 numbers, it will just return the total of those 2 numbers. So if I send it 5 and 10, then add is going to return 15 to me, rather than just writing it to the screen. If we want to write it to the screen, we can do that, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to turn these subs into functions, so they're generalized, and they just add the values together and return it for us. Then we can do whatever we want, and we're going to write it to the screen anyway, but it's just to show you how different a function is to a sub. So we're going to leave collect 2 numbers as a sub. Let's start with add. And what you do is you take these 3 letters sub and you change them to function. Notice that this changes as well, and you get a little green squiggly, which basically says that add is not returning a value. Well, if you're not going to return a value, use a sub instead. But we are going to return a value. We're just going to do it very, very soon. So right now, this would work. If we ran our program, it would do the same thing that it's always done. Okay, but first of all, we need to get this generalized. We want to add the 2 numbers together and return them. And while we've got a write line and a read line, we can't do that. So I'm going to get rid of the read line, and I'm going to get rid of the write line. And there's our little mathematical operation. And for the moment, what I'm going to do is return A and B. Okay, so this will actually take the values, add them together, and return them. Now, right now, we're not doing anything with this value. Okay, the function's good, but our collect 2 numbers isn't. Okay, you'll see down here, add. What we have to do is we have to catch that number and then do something with it. And the easiest way, just to demonstrate this to you, is I'm just going to do a quick write line. I'm sorry, because it's probably confusing that I got rid of the write line up there and put one down here instead. But it's a good idea to keep your functions really generalized. Okay, and by doing this, we're keeping it generalized. Let's test it out. Let's go add 5, 10, and it just jumped back to the menu. The problem right now is I don't have a read line to pause my program because I took it out of add. So what I'm going to do is pop it down here and start again. Add, and there we go. So that was the right line in the collect 2 numbers function. And all of a sudden, our code is starting to get a little bit cleaner by using these functions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly perform the exact same thing on subtract, times, divide, and modulus. Okay, I'm going to stop the video. You give it a go yourself while I'm doing this, and you attempt it, and I'll come back when I'm done. Hey everybody, and I'm back, and I've finished up our program. So basically, you can see all of my subs have been turned into functions. Each one just performs a quick return. And just a quick note on the return keyword. It's quite interesting because not only does it return a value from this function, only one value at a time, by the way, can be returned, but it also stops this function executing. So if I had returned that and then I had a write line, it's to be noted that this write line would never occur because as soon as you touch the return keyword, Visual Basic jumps to end function and comes back to collect 2 numbers. So this code doesn't ever happen. So that's a really interesting thing to note because when you get into loops and when you get into if statements in functions, you can use it really effectively. All right, so what I've done is I've just put in a quick write line, the addition of 2 numbers is, and see, I've actually put my function inside the write line like this, just using our little concatenate, nothing special. It's just writing them to the screen again, but now we could actually use them as much as we wanted. And I'm going to give you a challenge before I go. And that challenge is you're going to have to go in there, allow them one other operation. We've got 5 operations so far: add, subtract, multiply, divide, and modulus. I want you to add a 6th operation. And what that 6th operation is going to do is all 5 operations in one go. Okay, so you might have to write a new sub for collecting just 2 numbers and then calling all the 5 functions, but that's your challenge. Get it so it does all 5 functions in one hit if they want to. But that's all for this video. I hope subs, parameters, and functions are a little bit clearer, and we're going to move on to something brand new called classes in the next video. And this is Nick Dingle signing off. Happy programming, everybody. See you in the next video.